and the recording will be available to your members. So, okay. Anyway, so hello. On behalf of Elephant Artist Relief Society, also known as EAR, and the EAR leadership team, I'd like to officially welcome you to tonight's Umbrella Talk. My name is Jill Armstrong, an EAR board member and member of EAR's programming committee. For tonight's Umbrella Talk, we welcome Stacey Perlin, Chairperson of Perlin Foundation for Wellbeing. She's going to speak to you tonight about mental health for artists. But before we start that, I'd like to begin tonight's event in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth by honoring and acknowledging Mohkinstsis and the Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Iyasi Nakota and Tsuut'ina nations. EAR acknowledges that this territory is also cherished by the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3 with the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We celebrate all nations, Indigenous and non, who honor this land. We are grateful to engage in an honest and eager process of reconciliation. We are all treaty people. So thank you all for being here tonight. Tonight's event is part of EAR's ongoing series called Umbrella Talks, which offer presentations for artists of all disciplines. This year, EAR's Umbrella Talks are supported by the Rosa Foundation. But first of all, a little bit about EAR. Elephant Artist Relief Society is a registered charity that provides practical resources to artists of all disciplines in Calgary and surrounding areas, pardon me, to help sustain their well-being and livelihood. This year, EAR celebrates 17 years of service to the arts community. EAR provides emergency financial relief funding to artists who are experiencing a medical or financial crisis. And we also do professional development workshops such as this one, a twice monthly online artist meetup group on Facebook called Studio E, a wide variety of community resource information on Facebook and our website, and access to group health insurance benefits. As a charitable organization, we rely on grants, but also largely on donors, memberships, and fundraising to do much of what we do. You can help us by raising awareness about EAR, and if you can, consider becoming a member or donating online. 100% of every donation that we receive is allocated to providing emergency relief for artists in times of need. Another way you can support EAR is by purchasing a yearly membership. Memberships support our administration and programming, like the event you're watching right now. So there's just a couple last bits of housekeeping. Throughout the presentation, we ask that you keep your mics on mute and your video off, so there's minimal background interference. But please feel free to use the chat function to write any questions you have as they come up, and we'll answer them in the Q&A portion of the evening. There will be 2 5-minute breaks tonight. There will be sort of 3 sections to tonight's talk. The first Stacey will be talking about core concepts, and then after that 5-minute break, there'll be a sort of more participatory section. And then after that section, there'll be a 5-minute break and then a Q&A section. So when we get to the second break, we'll drop a link into the chat for a feedback form for you to fill out. And if you could fill that out, it would really be awesome. We really appreciate any time you can devote to filling out the questionnaire, because your feedback means a lot to us. It helps us to plan our future programming. And so we try to be as responsive as we can to your wants and needs. That's what we're here for. So during the Q&A portion, we'll address as many of your questions as we can until we end tonight at 9 p.m. So a little bit about Stacey. Stacey Perlin is the chairperson of the Perlin Foundation for Wellbeing and lead facilitator for BlissFest Labs, guiding a community of volunteers, artists, and professionals through arts and culture projects that support the local mental health ecosystem and healthy brain development, as well as promote mental health literacy. She brings her lived experience as someone who's regaining her authentic self after years of substance abuse, bankruptcy, homelessness, domestic violence, poverty, and abuse. Working towards healing every day, Ms. Perlin frames complex conversations with humor, compassion, and research backed observation. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Stacey Perlin. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you so much, Jill, and to the Elephant Artist Relief Society for hosting this presentation and holding space for their members to take this adventure together and to make space for our healing together. So thank you for being here. All right. So let's start with a review of our agenda. We're going to start with that speaker introduction piece, a little bit more of what, based off of what Jill had talked about, covering that overview of mental health, sort of a systems view of well-being. That's going to help establish the context for talking about mental health and the healing process. I'm going to lead you through a couple of exercises to activate our awareness and highlight a couple of those critical concepts to get us started. And then after a quick bio break, we'll dive into an adventure story that takes us through a typical healing journey via the narrative journey. So by working through these states of awareness, we're going to identify various processes within the healing journey. And these are a call to adventure, trials and roadblocks, you are the god/goddess, meet your maker, for real this time, bring it home, and then master of both worlds. And ideally, we're going to have time for another bio break just to help process before we jump into our Q&A, and then we'll say goodbye at 9 p.m. tonight. Now, we already heard a land acknowledgement from Jill, which was wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing that. So the only thing I guess I can add to that is that we are actually home of about 114,000 Métis people living in this province, of which 5,632 still live in one of the 8 remaining Alberta Métis settlements. And so we just want to say thank you for your ongoing stewardship of this land, for helping us to recognize the trauma of your experience, and for sharing the wisdom of the medicine wheel with us. If we take a look at some of the original census data from Calgary in about 1861, we find that about 2/3 of the settlers were French Canadian or actually identified as Métis. And so a lot of us are settlers within a Métis colony. And I think that's some food for thought. I like to give us something to consider the people, the culture, and to help move us forward in conversations. And so you'll notice even in our social media, we once a month will highlight particular Indigenous aspects within the mental health conversation as well. So who am I? All right, so as you heard, my name is Stacey Perlin. I have a long, complex history that includes helping my parents support kids and babies in our foster home at the age of 6, and then co-parenting my brothers as the oldest sibling. I was told from an early age that my emotional state was not as important as my father or my brothers or my mom's reality was really the only thing that mattered. It became evident from being even a toddler that I needed to support my parents' emotional well-being. They hadn't been modeled those skills and hadn't been able to evolve past those limitations. Now, this kind of observation is much easier to frame when looking back than it is when you're living at the time. At the time, I was in awe of a mother who fought for kids to feel loved and be safe. It wasn't her fault that the love she'd experienced was not as healthy as it could have been. And still, as we all grow older and we pass through a state of awareness, that while it's not our fault for what we have to deal with, it's our responsibility to do what we can to heal through and do better moving forward. So I worked in the film, television, stage industries, still do since the late 1990s, taking a break in 2008 to live in London and in England, working with their community mental health teams, their wards and administration, feeling like I was definitely around people that had to be crazy. And if they weren't, then I definitely was, right? So it was a really helpful check for me to walk alongside systems in support of mental challenges, in being able to understand how the system, like the public health system, triaged what mental health challenges were, mental health problems, and then when we get into mental illness and disorders. Since then, I've also studied public health behavior, positive mental health, and brain development curriculums. Now, why the shift in focus from film and television and arts to mental health? Well, my escapism through work was a coping mechanism for the significant trauma, abuse, assault, addiction, systemic poverty, domestic violence, and loss that I've experienced, including the bankruptcy and homelessness and estrangement from my family of origin. I became sober to discover multiple disabilities, degenerative diseases, and chronic pain since 2013, not to mention a family that was happy to continue enabling substance and emotional abuse. So I've spent about over 20 years now researching and relearning about emotional health and personal well-being, sometimes by choice, sometimes court mandated. And the great reward for me is that I've since worked with authorities and experts to design games, this workshops like these, activities, environments, virtual and in person. We do pop-up playgrounds and pop-up health centers that actually use games in the environment to help people understand these incredibly complex and sometimes heavy conversations in fun environments, and all to support the transfer of mental health and brain health information. The frustration, pain, and anger that kept me motivated to learn, research, and better understand how well being is recognized, supported, and measured as successful. Who says that we're okay? When I think someone else isn't okay, what if they think they are? How can I protect myself and others from those who don't want to know otherwise? What's the point of happiness and wellness if it's a story that doesn't exist in my reality? These are all really valid questions that go through ourselves when we're feeling that healing journey, right? What's the point? Or I've gotten this far, now it's not there. And so we have these great visuals in front of us that showcase, various stages of life that we all experience and the frustrations in trying to explain our universe to another. And so there's this graphic that I designed early on to help us break down how we typically see our well-being or the mindset. And so everybody starts, right? We all start in the same place with the unexamined life. And this is really where we start off as infants. And many of us have yet to move past the idea that unless we're hungry or tired, we're okay. What we're exposed to initially becomes the foundation of our health knowledge. And this differs greatly amongst individuals. Everyone's going to perceive different modeling, have different experiences, and create different ideals of what healthy is. This is the same if you are siblings, if you're twins, if you're married, if you're dating. Like, we have a different past, a different hope for the future, and a different story of what we're in. And so our awareness becomes triggered or activated by issues, challenges, and adventures. Maybe you go to kindergarten and you're like, you guys eat what? You're dressing like that. And so we find that, those friendships that happen at that early age can often be the most disparate from our supposed character and either sided personalities that will ever happen in our lives. We start out dating and you want to give your crush your favorite sweet and they're allergic. It changes your understanding of the behavior and the rituals and traditions associated with what you thought was very much a universal experience. When we finally feel motivated to integrate knowledge, it's because we're willing to learn more about a larger concept to reduce tension in our existence. Maybe you've picked up a self-help book. Maybe you figured out when to ask for certain things or have certain conversations. Maybe you've met with specialists to learn about a chronic condition or a longstanding health challenge. Maybe you've spent time with elders or community leaders to get a sense of what makes a complete life. Like today's session, we want to better understand the bigger picture to identify where we are on our own journey. We achieve understanding when we're better able to master our circumstances. We get that sometimes we need to change how we eat or stay active to improve our quality of life. We get that our initial idea of romance is going to have to change if we want to enjoy and appreciate our current romantic relationships. And I'm trying to highlight the bigger awareness shifts for you because you won't go through this like anyone else. That's why no two relationships are the same. No two families are the same. No two business operations or schooling curriculums are ever the same because we're all figuring out different ways of getting to where we want to go from where we are. Now, here's the other thing. By the time we reach acceptance, we've made significant changes to who we thought we were. We've done everything as correctly as we thought we should, but perhaps it didn't work out. Sometimes we do everything wrong, and yet our bodies and relationships remain strong. We get that others won't always understand us, and that's okay because we're all unique. And this takes years. It's a lifelong process. And that's why I wanted to break this down so that when we go, why don't they understand me? Or how come they don't, get me right away? It's a process. It takes time. We got to learn how to be vulnerable and open up and truly represent our authentic self so that, we finally get to a place where we gush and then we feel like it's wrong because we said stuff that we thought they wanted to hear instead of what we needed to say. And that's part of the process. In fact, going through those motions and those experiences help us to get better and to get closer to that ideal or aligned experience. So after COVID-19, everyone's definition of what mental health was, it changed. Research was intensified. More papers published and studies were commissioned. This is the most recent definition from the World Health Organization, and it's changed from the last time I looked at their website a few months ago. Definitely a few, like many times in the past 6 or 7 years. It's more succinct in some ways and more vague in others. We still use mental health interchangeably with mental illness, and health conversations are as confusing as ever. So let's read this together. Mental health is a state of mental well being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. It's an integral component of health and well being that underpins our individual and collective abilities to make decisions, build relationships, and shape the world we live in. Mental health is a basic human right, and it is crucial to personal, community, and socioeconomic development. Mental health is more than the absence of mental disorders. It exists on a complex continuum, which is experienced differently from one person to the next, with varying degrees of difficulty and distress, and potentially very different social and clinical outcomes. For us to move forward, let us say that mental health is the capacity to deal with life, and well being is a state in which we measure quality of life. This is why we look to well being as our ultimate goal in the healing journey. From the World Health Organization, they currently state that protective factors occur throughout our lives and serve to strengthen resilience. They include our individual social and emotional skills and attributes, as well as positive social interactions, quality education, decent work, safe neighborhoods, and community cohesion, among others. The puzzle pieces are parts of the whole, of who you are. These are the areas that each and every individual person has the responsibility to acknowledge. When you decide that you're okay and enjoying a high quality of life, there is meaningful engagement in all of these areas. Material well being, which is not the same as interpersonal relationships or physical well being, rights and emotional well being, which is different than personal development and not the same as self determination, and social inclusion. It's important to note there is no end game here or a state where we are fixed. Simply putting in time and effort in these areas, and you're the one who's feeling broken, is within a culture of growth and development is enough to prompt you to decide, I'm okay, right? I've got this. I'm working on it. I've got the investment plan or the strategy I'm working on. I'm plugging away each day. And this is how there can be no static description of what success is. As we learn more about what humans need to embrace their humanity, this is going to evolve accordingly. Still, you might see this as a reduction of the complexity and layers of the medicine wheel. This image was taken from the University of Manitoba's website in an article entitled Look to the Medicine Wheel for Mental Health, Elders Advise and First Nations Study. They say the biomedical model of treating mental illness is compartmentalized, and the medicine wheel framework is holistic. You treat the whole person within the family and within the community. You support the person in achieving balance in their emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental health. We can see a circular approach that interconnects the whole self as part of a larger community, and each of the sections feeding into the other and it being able to kind of feed that circular development path that we've come to know when we get caught going in circles, right? Look up. All right. So before we move forward, I think now is a good time to take a quick bio break. We're at about 7:23. So why don't we come back at 7:28 and we'll jump into the work that we do. And then that way we will move forward together and give each other the space we need to kind of process as we move along. See you back here at 7:28.
Thanks, Stacey. Okay, great. We'll be back at 7:28.
All right, we're going to give everybody a second to get back. We'll wait a minute to maybe till 7:29, and then we'll jump back into it. Now, for those that are already ready to go, you might want to make sure that you have your smartphone ready or another window on your computer or your desktop, because we're going to be doing, we're going to facilitate our participation anonymously through mentimeter.com. But no worries, we'll have more information ahead. Just kind of wanted to give you a heads up. All right. So we're at 7:29. So just to reiterate, what we did was we covered some really big concepts: life, the story, the meaning, how we go through things as from birth to death. So let's get to a couple of core concepts to bring it down to reality, or to our working reality, so that we can start to wrap our brains around how we can start to integrate this information into our day-to-day lives. So now that you have a better sense of what we're working towards with the healing journey and how we talk about healing in our global health systems, we can do a bit of skill building together. I'm about to introduce you to a core concept in the work that we do. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Marianne. To improve our sense of well-being. And you're going to notice that as we progress, I'm going to use sayings, proverbs, and quotations to help you process a particular concept. These phrases and statements are researched and implemented to help you to go from receiving this information to applying it to your own life and experiences. So, for example, I'll say a saying, and that's not just going to help you understand what we're doing, but it's also going to start to activate memories and situations that are going to be able to help you apply that, or to see what might make some clarity out of the things that we're working through together. So welcome. It's great to have you here for this session. So we're going to be taking this adventure here together along the healing journey, challenging our assumptions around mental health and well-being, as well as improving our confidence with important concepts. So are you ready? And the crowd goes, yes, or maybe, more likely. All right, so we are going to go to menti.com on your desk, tablet, or phone, and then enter in the code that says, well, yeah, if you go to menti.com, you'll see it. It's right there. It's just one little thing to do. And then that is going to help you get to the screen ahead. Give you another couple of seconds to do that. All right, now the good news is that when I actually show the screen up of what's coming up from everybody's contributions, the code is also going to be there, and we can put the code into the chat just to make sure everybody's got that. Okay, so once you're logged into the Events Mentimeter page, you're going to see the first question. So let me stop sharing this screen. I'm going to start sharing the other one. Okay, so our first question is in one word. Now you do get 3 options to say the words. So you can say actually 3 words. Describe the past week. I'm going to do these 2 as well so that you guys can see that come up on the screen. I like this. We got some quick learners. Now, the nice thing with the word cloud is that if multiple people have the same feeling, it's like stressful, it's just going to get bigger as we all contribute. All right, we've got 9 responses. We've got 4 people so far participating. We've got 15 participants in the room. So I'm just going to hold up until we get more contributions happening. Not a worry. We're going to take our time today to go through these. It's also the first Mentimeter, so, getting set up can take a minute. We're still at 6. 7. We'll wait until we get at least half of the people in the room adding in contributions, and then that way I feel like we've got some good adoption of the technology. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to message. We've got Jill, we've got Marianne, we've got Kaylee, myself. You can chat with us privately. Just say, hey, I need a little bit of support, and we're happy to go through it. I really do want you to feel like you're able to contribute in a meaningful way. Now, the other thing to note is that when I give you guys the handbook, there's a PDF. These responses are going to be included in that as well. So you can see that the community, as you can see, is going through some stuff right now, right? We've got whirlwind, demanding, hot, tiring, rough, terrible, depressing. These are not light words. This is not easily handled stuff. Yeah, overwhelmed. Oh, I love this. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that you're sharing these feelings that so that you can feel like, yeah, we're in this together. Now, before we dive into the scenarios, quotes, and other tools, let's review why we would even want to do this. Why are we here? Well, we're here to learn better ways to cope with stress. We're here to support your quality of life by improving your domains and awareness of domains of functioning or dimensions of well-being. And we're also here to reframe your existing story with a new protagonist. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this one. We're going to jump over back to the other screen. You're staying flexible, and I appreciate that. So what do we mean by reframing? You experience this likely more often than you think. It's a learned strategy, which means we can all practice it. So let's imagine a time when you're stuck waiting for someone in line, when you were in a rush, right? I gotta go, I gotta go. The person at the front of the line is asking lots of silly to you questions, and it feels like you're never gonna get there. Like, really, why am I stuck here? Don't they know that I have important things to do? You're kind of going through, do I butt ahead? Do I let them know that I've got important stuff? And suddenly the person at the front laughs and says to their friend, I must seem horrible to the rest of this lineup, but I really appreciate the help understanding this menu. That's when you notice their walking cane, indicating vision loss. No wonder the person was asking so many questions, they couldn't see the signs and information. The wait was still there. You're still in a rush, but you could feel the shift in your emotions and attitude. Did you become more patient, more compassionate? The definition by the American Psychological Association is a process of reconceptualizing a problem by seeing it from a different perspective. Altering the conceptual or emotional context of a problem often serves to alter perceptions of the problem's difficulty and to open up possibilities for solving it. In psychotherapy, for example, the manner in which a client initially frames a problem may be self defeating, often can be self defeating. Part of the therapist's response might be to reframe the problem and the thoughts or feelings that the client associates with it so as to provide alternate ways to evaluate it. This is huge. There's more information through the My Health link in Alberta. I'm actually going to link the website within the notes in the handbook as well. Now, more complex memories, trauma, and experiences can benefit from an experienced elder or health professional supporting you in your reframing process. And I haven't even talked about somatic therapy, where instead of a top down approach, we're looking at a body or bottom up approach where we're calming our body in order to calm our mind and help reframe the context of our feeling in order to be able to observe those problems in our minds with more compassion and space. However, you're learning by through the story and examples about waiting in the lineup that we can shift our awareness on our own. So, with that in mind, we're going to continue our adventure exploring different ways to reframe our lives. This will help you better handle life's challenges, and using these scenarios, you may be more able to manage stress and handle depression and anxiety, of which we're very familiar. And by the way, since COVID, we said the studies and data was suggesting that depression was the most ramped up scenario that was occurring in Canadians, and that's since been replaced with anxiety. And there's a few different ways to think about anxiety and depression. Depression is often looking backwards. Anxiety is worried about the future. Depression is in our stomachs, and we'll end up feeling like we're just hunched over and can't really digest things. Anxiety is in our chest. We can't really breathe through things, right? So this is something just to help you kind of identify, again, where are you in your process? What is this bringing up for you so that you can give yourself a little bit of love, a little bit of compassion, and we're going to move on. So let's practice one together to get comfortable. The quote here is, even the little bits add up. You got to give yourself a chance. So here's our scenario. Let's say you get to a set of stairs and you have a disability, temporary or permanent. And the first response is anger and frustration. How come they don't have a ramp? How come they don't have wide enough doors, right? And then you might focus on gratitude that you're only recently partially injured, perhaps, so you can slowly make your way up the stairs. Or perhaps you have limited mobility, but you can ask for help from someone nearby, or maybe you have your phone on you and you can call a friend. Lastly, you may have encountered this situation before, called in advance, and arranged use on their stair lift system. All of these responses are better than sitting at the bottom of the stairs. Showing up is a big step in the process. And as you can see, we're deeply affected by where we perceive that we are in our journey. Okay, we've reviewed some big ideas. We've reviewed some core concepts. We are ready to dive into this journey. Think of us at the edge of a forest, excited about what we're going to find and enjoying a beautiful day. The sun is shining, the smoke has dissipated, the boardwalk pathway ahead of us is clear, and the breeze just barely pushes the clouds across the sky. We're about to set off along this path into the woods, into a forest, and we've been promised a reward deep within, an area that hasn't been visited by anyone we know in a very long time. You've heard scary stories, of course, but didn't really believe them until just this moment. What if there's something that you have to face before you feel ready? What if there's no reward after all? You've tried to ignore this call to adventure, being too busy and having more important things to do. But it kept coming up, and now it's loud, and now you're ready to brave the unfamiliar as much as you think you can be, and we're here together. So we're going to take a deep breath, and actually, this is a great time for us to do some box breathing together. Are you familiar with this technique? Let's do a set of 3 box breathing counts together. So what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in for a count of 4. We're going to hold for a count of 4. We're going to release for a count of 4. And then we're going to hold in again for a count of 4. All right, I'm going to take a sip of water. And breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. And out. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. And in. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. And in. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. Oh, rolling the shoulders. I feel that already. All right, guys, it's time to go. We make our way through the forest, listening to the birds, checking out nature at its most lush. The summer warmth is cooled by the breeze and tree branches around us. Our first quote to activate our awareness is from Sonia Choquette. It's like finding a way out of the woods when you're lost. You go in circles, continually returning to the same place until you stop and study the place that you're in now without calling it good or bad. Softly, you hear muffled sobs somewhere ahead of us. It sounds like someone is in trouble. How would we recognize that they are lost? Now, you may have guessed it. It's time for a new Mentimeter slide. So let me jump over to our Mentimeter. Here we go. All right. How would we recognize that this person is lost? Okay. All right. So, oops, let's refresh that. There we go. Um, all right, everybody. I could do some hold music. Do do do, it's the hold music. How do we know when someone is lost in the woods? I don't know. What can we see? What could we hear? 'Cause they're lost in the woods. Ooh, I like this. Sometimes so much of us getting involved in challenges or recognizing that something's up is, oh, I don't know what I'm looking for. I have no idea, right? But it sounds like we're pretty good about being able to understand if someone's in trouble. Oh, I love it. Yeah. They tell you they're lost. Absolutely. Sometimes you have to go like, hey, looking like you're feeling okay there, you know? And maybe they look confused or look like they don't have the necessary supplies where they are. Maybe they have a numb look or a vacant stare. You might see tears and hear some sniffles. Sometimes they look panicked and their breath is quick and shallow. What if they yelled at us, "Look away, there's nothing to see here"? So many times in first aid, we hear, okay, if somebody has uh, we're choking, we run to the washroom. We're embarrassed, right? Embarrassment and shame and guilt, these are very much part of how we recognize that something's not right. I love this, you guys. This is really helpful. All right, we're going to jump back to our presentation. Slowly, we make our way down the path. We still have to pass by them to make our way, so we can't really ignore them. I mean, we could, but we're in a position where we're like this close. And the sobs lighten up, and by the time we actually meet the person by the tree, they're kind of sniffling and staring at the ground. We start by saying hello and making an observation. Hi, you seem to be not feeling great. Is everything okay? They shake their head and indicate they aren't feeling very well. Okay. The next step is a set of suggestions. So we're going to jump back to Mentimeter here together. Oop, I see what happened there. So let me stop. We're going to jump over back to the Mentimeter. Okay. All right. So this one is a multiple choice, much easier than us having to get creative on our own. We got to change it up. So, what suggestion do you think of the following suggestions would be most helpful? So, the first one is remember your goal of going home and focus on things that will help with that. The second one is when I got lost, I read this great book, How to Get Out of the Woods. It was really helpful for me. Second, or third, it's going to be dark soon, so you should get going and see how far you get. All right. Now, which one am I going to choose? All right, we're figuring out. Looking pretty good so far. We got 3 responses. We'll give everyone a second to figure this one out because it's a little different. Now, I want you to listen right as you and think of that time when you might have been going through something similar or heard something similar. I know we've heard all three. And the idea is like, which one do you find the most helpful? Hmm. We've got 6 so far. We'll wait just for a couple more. Mhm. All right. Well, in our current understanding of mental health, best practices, psychology, how to help people, the option that's the most helpful shows the most empathy and allows the individual to choose for themselves. So that's going to be the remember your goal of going home and focusing on things that are doing things that will help with that. Right? We don't want to tell them how to get there. They might have gone a way that we're not familiar with. They might have considerations that we just can't think of. And really, what we actually want to do is help them build confidence in their decision making skills. So it's really important because otherwise, that staying stuck is going to be a huge challenge when we feel like we're suffering and we have no way out. All right. Great work, everybody. I'm really happy with this. Now we've got one more Mentimeter one. Now, what would you say to this person to help them, knowing that what we just talked about? All right. Oh, I love that. All right, I'd totally be lost around you guys, no problem. We've got 5 so far. We're going to wait for a couple more, no problem. Mhm. Oh, I love that. All right, well, we have somebody that's just joining in the room as well. So once they're in, we'll talk about where we're at. All right. So what we're doing is we're talking about what we would say to this person that we found as we have entered the forest and we're taking off on our hike. Just, they seem like they're going through something. Oh, I love that. So how, what would we say to support them? Now, here it is. This is a trick question because the answers you're coming up with are great pieces of advice the next time you find yourself frustrated or upset. Write them down. Right. Make them a little mini poster, get a sense of how you approach the situation and maybe prepare the people around you to know this is something that I find really helpful, right? This is really a cool exercise. Again, a lot of this is about self-awareness and understanding how we move about the world. I love this. Thank you. All right, so let me stop sharing. We're going to go back to our presentation here. Do, 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 do. And we got the thumbs up again. Great work. So you were able to support them as they regulated their emotions and gained a different perspective on the situation. And it's not hopeless, but maybe hopeful, or maybe feeling a little lost and unaware to having a sense of what's important and what they need to do. And maybe at the very least, right, as we like to say, what's the next right step? Now they're going to head back towards the parking lot, which you just came from. After lots of thank yous and hugs, you part ways. So it's time for us to get back on the path and head out in search of adventure. We share some snacks and challenge each other to spot the wildlife in the forest. Not long after you start on your journey again, one of your friends complains about the length of the hike, saying they're bored and nothing interesting is happening. Turns out they didn't wear the right gloves for their wheelchair. No wonder they're not feeling comfortable, and no wonder they're not able to surrender to the experience of being in nature. It happens. Not wearing the right socks, not wearing the right shoes, not wearing the right whatever, right? It happens. Now, hold on. There we go. It seems so obvious. If you decide to go out on a journey, plan to be prepared. Now, we can't always plan for everything, but your friend stayed up late last night and has been eating everybody else's food and bragging that they're the fun friend. Why couldn't they own it like the rest of the group? Are they consciously dragging the group down? Our next quote is from Georgia Nichols. If you act with discipline, you'll have no regrets. This means that if you do something and you don't regret it, you acted with discipline. But if you do something and you regret it, then you didn't act with discipline. Conversely, if you don't do something and you don't regret it, then you acted with discipline. And if you don't do something and you regret it, then you didn't act with discipline. It can get confusing, but the idea is that for the different scenario, thinking about how you can act and your regrets can help us to understand what discipline can do for us and how it can help us move through life. Cognitive dissonance. Ah, yes. So another factor beyond discipline that affects our subconscious is cognitive dissonance. It's a mental conflict that occurs when your beliefs don't line up with your actions. It's an uncomfortable state of mind when someone has contradictory values, attitudes, or perspectives about the same thing. This is from psychiatrist Grant Brenner, co founder of Neighborhood Psychiatry over in Manhattan. And he says the degree of discomfort varies with the subject matter as well as how well the person copes with self contradiction. So, we are familiar with this. We're going to talk about some signs of cognitive dissonance. So we're going to stop the slides again. We're going to jump over to Mentimeter. Here we are. All right, so here are our options. Signs that you might be experiencing cognitive dissonance. Is it a general discomfort that has no obvious or clear source? Maybe it's confusion. Could it be feeling conflicted over a disputed subject matter? Right, we just kind of give a bit of a description. So maybe you have, what did you just hear? Is it people saying that you're being a hypocrite? Is it being aware of conflicting views and or desires, but not knowing what to do with them? Let's refresh that. All right, everybody. So take your pick because we only get one. That's the fun part. And we're going to submit. Ooh, brilliant. We've got a few people on already. This is a fun one, right? Because when we think about cognitive dissonance, it's recognizable everywhere within ourselves and the world around us. And so we each see it differently because it plays into our own past experiences differently. I like this. So we've got 3 saying general discomfort that has no obvious or clear source. So it's just kind of that something's off. We've got that feeling conflicted or disputed over an actual subject matter. We've got being aware of those conflicted views and desires. All right. Great news, everybody. It's a trick question. Ah, so this one is it's all things actually. The trick question is that these are all representative of cognitive dissonance, and we experience. The point is that what we're trying to make is that by going around and saying you're doing this to spite me or you're doing this against me doesn't help people to move through feeling uncomfortable or having a discomfort or realizing that they said 2 conflicting ideas about the same thing. right? We can change our mind. Feeling like somebody is a hypocrite and then, getting really angry at them and saying, you have no concept about, saying that you do this and then behaving like this. People don't necessarily know because it's so embedded in our brain functionality. And cognitive dissonance is something that we have over the span of our lifetimes. And so it's not something that you can turn off or fix. It's simply understanding that bringing anger to challenge people when you're recognizing that difference in action and belief isn't going to move the conversation forward. And in fact, we're going to talk about some ways that help us move out of cognitive dissonance and into constructive conversations. So, which do you think is easier? We can reduce cognitive dissonance or that tension and frustration by changing our existing beliefs, by adding new beliefs, minimizing the importance of the beliefs. And these are three you can say if you strongly agree or disagree. I'm curious to hear. We're going to talk about them in ways that reflect where you're at. So here's an example. Um, you're dealing with somebody who, as we get through COVID, right, doesn't understand where we are with masks. And sometimes they wear masks, sometimes they don't. And what happens is that when it's important to you, maybe they don't notice it. And so you could say, hey, can I get you to change your understanding about masks and we'll have a conversation about it? Or can I help you to understand my health needs in a different way that might help you to understand how to change your behaviors to support my health needs? Or maybe we say, you know what, I'm just always going to wear a mask and then I don't have to worry about them wearing a mask. Either way, you're able to work with those things in a different application than simply saying someone is against me and I feel like a victim, or I need to solve this with anger and a confrontation, right? Because at the end of the day, what this workshop is about is how do we reframe the situations and scenarios in our life to help us feel like we have a way forward that is towards peace, that is towards building relationships, helping us focus on common ground. All right. So hopefully that takes it away from feeling like you have to understand it in order to get it, to simply saying that, we've got a lot of conversations and interactions that need to happen in order for us to better understand, support, love, and celebrate one another. I love this, you guys. I know changing beliefs is really hard, and the idea of adding new beliefs and in changing our awareness really is a stronger way, I feel, to help us understand and move forward together. And the minimizing, it's a bit iffy, right? Depends on the situation that you're dealing with. Absolutely. Now, for our friend who prides themselves, let's head back to that slide. Do, 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 do. All right, so for our friend who prides themselves on being the life of the party, they could believe that being the fun friend maybe isn't so important. Maybe they could add the belief that the fun friend is also a prepared one, or could decide to be a different kind of friend in the group. Perhaps one that needs extra support for their chronic health condition and engage their friends in reflection of that. Right? I mean, if you have suffered a vision loss because of a recent surgery, you are not going to be out there being like, yep, this is what I need. I'm totally okay being blind and having to operate differently in the world. Oh no, it is going to take you years of reframing your relationships, your experiences, and feeling like you're getting out in the world and having dignity and a quality of life. And really, that's what this is about, is that we go through incredible changes and challenges in life. And so being able to understand how we can work with each other to add to the experience instead of challenging each other about stuff that's being taken away from us, or the challenges or the suffering or the loss that we're experiencing, all the better to be able to move forward in a loving way together. So cognitive dissonance can be problematic if you start to justify or rationalize destructive behaviors, says the ex-addict, or if you start to stress yourself out by trying to rationalize the dissonance, says the anxious or depressive person. When cognitive dissonance goes unaddressed, it can not only cause angst, but it can lead to impaired decision making And on the flip side, when cognitive dissonance is properly addressed, it can lead to better decision making and greater self awareness. So now that we have a bit more compassion for our friend and they've adjusted their beliefs and we've adjusted ours, we're back on our way. There have been plenty of opportunities already to turn around and go back home. Still, the call of adventure beckons us down the boardwalk path. A big question that helps when someone is feeling doubt about the journey is, what if someone took the choice away from you? It helps you to get a sense of what is in your control, right? Oh, I could never figure this out, or oh, I don't know how I'm going to be able to prioritize that. Well, when I was a child, I had that taken away all the time. Either it was from the attitudes or the outright decisions of parents and people around me. We go to school and we go, oh, this is absolutely, so frustrating because I'll never figure out what to do in school or with my studies. And all of a sudden, you have no choice because you got the first job you applied for and you thought, well, I'll take the easy way. Or, you're tired of the responsibility. Well, what if someone offered to do this for you? Right? That really helps when we're tired of responsibility. Often it's far scarier to let someone else lay out our life for us, knowing they don't understand us like we do. Right? There's nothing worse than going up to a buffet table and saying, here's your plate. What is the point of being at a buffet if you're going to give me my plate of food? Thank you very much. And who's to say you don't have dietary considerations that haven't been considered? Maybe it's the day old shrimp, never mind the fresh shrimp that you can see over in the buffet table, right? Like thinking about things in a way that we ask those questions of somebody taking away that choice or somebody offering to do it for us really helps us when we're feeling exhausted and tired. All right. So the quote here is another one from Sonia Choquette. Look at your life's path as the path your soul chose to walk. The more complex and difficult, the greater the opportunity for growth. And all great lives are born out of great tests. Now, this one is a little dicey. So we're going to go jump back to Mentimeter because I have a question for you. So how does that statement make you feel? All right, I'm going to bring it up again. Look at your life's path as the path your soul chose to walk. The more complex and difficult, the greater the opportunity for growth. All great lives are born out of great tests. Hogwash. Intimidated, peaceful, better, sad. Like, I mean, there's every response whenever when I've said this statement. And there is no wrong answer, right? It's a wild one. And I can honestly say that over the years, I've had different responses to those words in that statement. More ready to move forward. I like that. And fear, concern, worry, intimidation, that overwhelm is absolutely normal, right? Because we're just like, wait a second, if this is great and I don't even want a great life, right? Like I didn't ask for these tests, right? This is still where we're in this push and pull of where are we in our journey? And this really helps us to understand how we've been able to reframe certain aspects of what we're dealing with. Because, truth be told, this statement may make us feel overwhelmed in one area, but in other areas, it might make us actually feel more empowered. Now, as I've mentioned, I've been through quite a lot of trauma over the years. And you better believe, the first few times, and when I'm talking in therapy to somebody, the first few times it was like, this is BS. Thank you very much. And I don't need any of this growth in this regard. I just want to try and get out of where I'm at, right? I came to appreciate this as a way to derive motivation from my circumstances. And if this is something I got myself into, which in my case, some of those things I might get myself out with help, of course. If I took on the story of abuse and victimhood, I could adopt a new story, maybe, that helps me to release those identities. And lastly, if I want a less great life, I can choose situations and people who can help me maintain a quieter existence. Thank you so much for sharing with me on this one. We're getting into some bigger concepts and feelings, so I appreciate you holding tight with me on it. All right, we're going to jump from this question. We're going to jump to another slide, moving along the path. All right, so further along the path, we're loosened up. All right, we're feeling more in tune with our surroundings. Now, that being said, we've run out of snacks, and lunch was done a while ago. So here's the quote for us: train yourself to find water in a desert, and you'll have refreshment under any circumstances. So the idea here is that life is hard and it can feel tough. And how we handle that can change the situation for the better faster than you think. Challenges don't wait until we're ready for them to affect us. How can we create space between stuff happening and our reactions? If we practice gratitude for what we have, we'll be happier with what we have. This is a big help in grounding our emotions and clearing our thinking. It becomes easier to choose what to invest in or save for. Now, which of these little experiments, I'm going to bring up the Mentimeter again, would you try to practice this? Now, as I mentioned earlier, systemic poverty is not a joke. And making under the poverty line for over a decade is exhausting, and it brings in its own physical challenges along with the mental duress. And so this was something that, like I said, it's not super easy to jump into. It's not something that is really fun, but figuring out ways to find water in the desert meant that I could find ease and peace no matter the chaos or the duress at the time. And that means having a chronic flare up and being in an emergency waiting room for 7 hours at a time. Like, really, this is about when you feel at your least control, right? That's when we want to respond, and it's irrational. So where do we create space? So here's the little experiments. I'm going on a bit. Now, the first one is waiting a day to buy something I want, so I'm sure I really need it. The second one is we picked some financial ones here. Picking something to save for, so it's easier to spend less. Third one is finding a second job or source of income so I can afford special treats. And then the fourth one is using a decision-making worksheet or asking someone to help facilitate the process for me. Now, we'll often use the fourth option quite quickly because the idea of um, when we're doing a mortgage or we're looking at bigger expenses, right? We're like, okay, have I got this right? What are the potential costs? What are the maintenance costs that I have no context of? Where am I going to find information on this? If I'm starting a business or if I want to take my hobby and create a sole proprietorship so I can start claiming taxes. This was a big thing, right? Because we think if I'm spending every money I have or every bit of money I have to do the work that I love to do, am I getting everything back and benefiting from it as much as I can? And that was with working with tax professionals, game changer. Even tax software now is really great at being able to prompt these things. I know I'm gushing. All right, we've got about 5 responses at the moment. And so right now we have a tie between waiting a day to buy something that we really want. Most people are saying we're going to work this out with somebody else. We're going to give ourselves a process so that we can feel maybe more confident in that decision, which gives us some space and feeling like, okay, I've got a plan. We've got a strategy ahead of us, so we can feel like we've got some ideas of the next steps, and we can start to build confidence and then success in watching that plan happen. Oh, I love it. There's so many benefits to this one. Great work, guys. I like this. All right, we're going to jump back to the slide. Okay. I think we're at the bottom of that one there. Yep, perfect. All right, we're moving on. Walking along, you realize that in addition to no more food, you're out of water. Now you're glad you didn't give your buddy a hard time earlier for not being so prepared. So you ask if somebody might share their water with you. They're happy to do so, thank goodness. As you stop for a minute, your friend asks for advice, finally, about preparing for a difficult time with school. You've been waiting for this. Now, what advice do you give them for being ready for anything? Let's jump back to Mentimeter. How are we going to help somebody be ready to face anything? And there's going, how do I deal with this difficult time in school, at work, on a project? What's the advice that you kind of give, or you tend to give? Hmm, I like that. Yeah, I like that. Um, there we go. Prioritize your peace. Yeah. Practice acceptance. Oof, these are you guys have been through some stuff. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And feel free to consider, like, as you're writing these out, it's a reminder that we've been through so much already. Maybe they've survived all their previous tough tests, and maybe they've worked so hard. They really deserve the opportunity that's there for them, and they deserve the chance to find the right support that they deserve. Often we like to remind others that they have what it takes to succeed, and we all deserve happiness and a feeling of achievement in life. Has anyone ever told you to take it one day at a time or put your heart into it? You know, give time to acknowledge when we have those feelings of misgivings. Respect those feelings and face those fears and maybe challenge those assumptions that things might not get any better. That helps us stay present when stressed instead of repressing our emotions and intuitive knowings. I really want to remind you, we feel things for a reason. All right, we're going to jump back to our presentation here. There we go. All right, our friend is thinking about what you've said, and it's reminded you of a time when you felt helpless or stuck. It's time that we meet the god or goddess, and this means the state when you realize that the power was within you all along. In our story, we come across an oasis with water, but it's super slippery, and you're unsure about crossing the river to get there. The first quote is, "When the student is ready, the teacher appears." What if the situation is your teacher and you must become the student of the situation? The second quote for us here is, "Place yourself in a position of learning and the ideal strategy will become apparent." A student's mentality helps us work past the assumption that we know everything about the situation and all potential solutions. So if you think you already know, why would you ask for help or want to learn more? One of the strongest reframing techniques is putting ourselves in the mindset of a curious observer. Now, here's an interesting way that we can work with this. How might introducing a mentor change a situation like this? All right, I'm going to change the slides. We're going to jump back to Mentimeter. Okay, so how can a mentor help us embrace a student mindset? Now, this one's a little harder for us to think about what the answer is. So I put in a few ideas of things that I've either said as a mentor or people have said to me as a mentor. I like it. Oh my gosh. And yeah, game changing, right? Oh my gosh, that is fantastic. The idea here is we're looking for statements that help you get a wider perspective on the situation, to learn techniques to manage yourself and the circumstances, or simply to stay with you until you feel more confident again. Right? There is nothing like that fabulous cartoon with Pooh and Piglet, where Pooh's sitting on the stump or the log and just being like, "Oh, I'm thinking here, trying to figure things out," and Piglet's like, "Yeah, I'll sit with you." Right? Good mentors can help slow us down so that we can focus on one step at a time and reinforce that it doesn't happen overnight, especially with chronic pain or chronic conditions. When you're 15 years into dealing with something, you better believe that having a community of people that understand, even when you have rare diseases, is everything. Whether it's my research partnerships or my alternative therapy people, it's just so important so that we can have faith in our process, so that we can feel grounded, so that we can feel capable. And fabulous mentors will validate that your experience is real and reinforce that the story you're telling yourself matters in a really real way. I love this. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your input on this one. All right, let's jump back on the path. So congratulations. You all got through the oasis, you collected running water for your bottles, and you're able to gather your wits for the journey ahead. Whew. All right. So we rested in the warm sunshine and noticed that the sun is coming down. We've been out hiking all day, did not expect to be out this long. We shared lots of brainstorming and ideas to prepare for the next leg. And still, we've run through our supplies and we've had to forage for more. We've exhausted our energy. And you know what, frankly, we need to rest for the night. It sounds like wild animals are around, even just if they're small ones, it can be kind of scary. And we don't have a fire. So what happens when we're halt, right? HALT, also known as hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Losing our patience, our concentration, our temper is common, as is breaking down and crying, snapping at other people, rushing through actions without thinking. I'm sure you've thought up your own examples. Oh, Ellie, okay, have a good one. And there'll be these in the handbook as well, so you won't miss out. Uh, and we rush through actions without thinking. And I'm sure you've thought up your own examples as we've expressed that life can will be hard and it can surprise us, especially when we've been telling ourselves a story of permanent stability, excellence in decision making, and perfect behavior at all times. What is this that I am dealing with, right? I make the joke, if we had putting together a festival that celebrates the challenges of life and giving everybody a golden ticket, the certificate for one perfect life. We seem to believe that we were gifted this amazing experience and that we're so disappointed when all of a sudden it's not meeting up to our expectations. The quote for us here is, "How we respond to life and reality dictates whether or not we move through situations and the impact on us." It's one of my favorite speakers, Dr. Patrick T. And so let's jump to the Mentimeter cloud. We're getting to the end of it here. Do, 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 do. And the question is, oh, we missed this one, but that's okay. We're almost getting to the end anyway. What happens when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? So we've all got our own unique perspectives, but I'm curious to hear what you feel highlights HALT for you. Oh, I feel that one. Isolation big time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And especially when we're dealing with intergenerational relationships, the stuff that our parents or older would give us, we can never give to those that are younger than us. It's this awareness that comes through age and growth and evolution. But the stuff that, I hear that people have been through in their lives, it's heartbreaking, and we can bring that out because it's there, it's rooted within us. And until we deal with it or acknowledge it and move through that, it's going to become part of our own programming, right? I love that. Loss of confidence, self-doubt, oh, big time, right? And everything slows down, sometimes it can feel like we're stuck in quicksand. Yep, absolutely. Oh, this is good stuff. hmm Now, the big thing to remember here is that we're all feeling these things. We are all experiencing these things. So I really want to remind you that it is part of the human experience, and the judgment and the shame isn't going to get us anywhere, right? It's saying, wow, we have this stuff here. And the quote for us here is pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. We cannot avoid pain, but we can avoid joy. So luckily, we each got a bit of sleep overnight, and one of us foraged for fresh berries to eat for breakfast. Another quote that applies is it's not the load you're carrying, but how you're carrying it. So we're going to jump back to Mentimeter here for one of our last ones as we're in the thick of this adventure. How would we support the emotional well-being of the group? So we're awake. The berries was one example, right? But how else might we support everybody in the group going through the thick of this adventure? And I made it easy. I made it a multiple choice for us. Right? Oh my gosh. And this is why community is so important when you can remind each other of what we've accomplished, having a good support network, understanding that, we're strong, we're in this together, and at least we have each other to support each other. The worth is a tough one, right? It's like, how do we know that we're worthy of success? Right? And going back to the very beginning of the presentation, what is success for us? It's feeling okay. It's feeling like we have a sense of validity and of worth. So it goes hand in hand. It's very interesting that way. It can be tough to motivate ourselves and others when we feel down and out. So getting curious about what works for you on your hard days and tough moments, like in this workshop right now, actually is going to help you deal better with those challenges when they come up in the future. Got 8. Perfect. All right, let's jump back to the presentation. All right, guys. So the phrase for us here is it is not luck nor random chance that determines the quality and content of our lives. It is very simply our focus. We originally thought our reward was going to be some kind of treasure that we could fit in our backpacks. However, the reward was something we didn't expect. It was renewed confidence based on our observed competence. We built our self belief and developed our self awareness. So, how can we bring home these rewards of our newfound self confidence and capacity? The knowledge that we've learned about ourselves when in tough situations? Well, we hold them in our hearts. We write them in our journals. We recognize our fears and compassionately love ourselves through the learning. Whoop, I jumped ahead again. So, visually, all right, we're going to go back to before the challenges and lessons when we were relaxed and we felt like we had this adventure well handled. The quote for us here is from Hermann Hesse. Within you is a stillness and a sanctuary to which you can retreat at any time. Knowing that you've been able to help others, creative, participate in creative problem solving, and create collaborative solutions? Do you feel more capable and confident? Do you believe that you could bring the peace from the calm after the storm to whatever emotional weather is being experienced? We're going to jump back to Mentimeter for one last question of how do you feel? Wait for it. After this adventure together. Oh, I love this. This is always my favorite part, especially when we start with such incredible fatigue at the very beginning. Oh, wow. Oh, that's exciting. Okay. So thank you for that. We are going to take our second 5-minute break. That means we're going to come back at 8:35. And that means that we'll have time for our questions and answers. So I'm going to put that up on the screen. We'll turn off the sound and the video for us and give ourselves a bit of time to process what we have just been through. All right. See you soon.
Just a quick comment before Stacey comes back. Marianne has dropped our questionnaire into the chat. So if you have take a minute or two and fill that out, it's pretty much multiple choice to maybe a few words here or there. That would be very helpful. Thank you so much.
All right, we're starting to come back. It's 8:35, and as you heard, Jill graciously reminded us about Marianne dropping in the link for the survey. That's going to help with programming, that's going to help with grant applications, and ultimately help them know and serve the community that much more meaningfully. So thank you for doing that. I also wanted to acknowledge before we move forward in the questions and answers that there was a response in the "How are you feeling now?" Of "I'm still lost." And I want you to know that that is absolutely valid. The whole point of this workshop was to identify techniques and skills, but that isn't going to change where you're at the moment. And understanding if that's where you're at, then understanding that that the next step for you is figuring out what it's going to take or what might be another idea or conversation to help you feel less lost and to help you figure out whether that's talk therapy or somatic therapy or another workshop or group therapy or peer support. I tell you, there was a time when I felt like I was counseled out, and other times I wanted to volunteer with psychologists just to better understand the work. There is no one way, but knowing that that's where you feel and that's where you are right now, I want to honor that for you. And I know, I hope that you don't think that, we were going to fix things through this conversation, but simply help us feel like we had a wider perspective on what healing is, that it's not an end, but a cycle that we go through repeatedly for different reasons as we have different learnings. And each cycle is going to be a little bit different because who we were and how we acted and how we behaved and thought isn't, it helped create the problem, but it's not going to help create the solution, whether that is how we think about something that we can't change or something that we created in the first place. So I just wanted I hope that helps. And I hope that helps you feel like it's not okay where we are, but at the same time, it's okay that that's where we're at for the moment. All right. We are in the question and answer period. Hopefully everybody's made it back okay. I want to remind you that if you feel more comfortable, you can throw your questions into the chat and I'll go sort of like a free flow of resources, ideas, suggestions, clarity or clarification on points or concepts that have come up today. But we definitely wanted to make sure that you had a moment to gather yourself and to gather your thoughts about the very interesting adventure that we've taken together. Now, if I don't hear anything, what I am going to do is I'm actually going to go back to the slide that we missed in the Mentimeter, because I do feel like there's some good wisdom in the group, and I know that there'll be some good inputs there. So let me do that while we wait. Let me go back to Mentimeter. There we go. So where might we meet teachers or mentors that could really inspire our group? Now, I'm usually dealing or supporting friends in grant applications or dealing with bureaucracy and infrastructure systems. So, it's like, well, I really want to do this project, but the city doesn't get it, or the funder doesn't get it, or I want to make sure that, the community gets what I'm trying to do. And so usually one of my first responses, and so I'm going to put this in the Mentimeter here, is administration, as well as uh, experts and program leads, arts organizations, friends, other artists or other practitioners within the practice or the field. You could also have your regional organizations, your international organizations. Sometimes the work that you're doing is very niche, right? And so figuring out maybe how it applies. Again, we do a lot of work in art for social change. Oh, for crumb's sake, what is that? Am I a socially aware artist? Am I trying to change people's minds or trying to change the community around me? And so those conversations, it's like, well, where do we have those chats? And so there's now newsletters that connect people. There are decks of cards and tools that have been developed. There are different networks as well. Ooh, networks is another one. I appreciate that you're contributing here. And of course, same thing, if you feel like you have a unique question from the concepts or the context that we've covered, happy to answer those in the chat as well. Otherwise, I do appreciate this because this helps round out the workbook for us when we go back to look at this. And then again, for people that might have left early or weren't here at all. Oh, yes, education is a big one for sure. Going to alumni events as well was actually an interesting one. If I want to find a department head, go to a function that they have to be at. There's there's free food and you get to bug the people and say, hey, while I have you here. All right, we have I'm a manager of an arts organization, and I'd like to inspire my group and understand their stresses. So, what kind of forum would you suggest? Great question. Okay, so here's some interesting stuff over the years, and I want you to feel like there are lots of different ways to do this. The key is starting the conversation or the process, and then being comfortable with many iterations. And so an example I'm going to use here is, so we do a monthly wellness meetup. It's virtual, it's free. All you got to do is sign up every month and we host it. We have conversations. It helped people that have been recently diagnosed with, different mental illness or people that came out of hospitalization. And I mean amazing artists and creatives that are trying to figure out, how do I maintain a practice? Or new parents wondering, okay, I'm mom now. How do I maintain my artistic practice? And we had this fabulous expert that was like, well, get up at 4 a.m. before everybody else. Find a way to make time for it, right? Like, so those types of forums do work well. And I think that's a great way to start because it allows you to hear what's happening in the world around you and from your community. But at the same time, if people don't have time for that, which post COVID, we definitely have more and more of, I don't have time for that. So, having part of your newsletter be a letter answering piece, like send in your suggestions of common challenges in your practice and where you're finding yourself, and we'll reach out to different experts to speak to those and come up with different ways of either reframing or fixing, or not fixing, but repairing your relationship to those things. So, for example, you could have, a Dear Arts Org, right? So the name of your organization, Dear Rose Foundation, right? For example, how do I deal with funding challenges? Or how do I deal with this? And it gives an opportunity to speak in the newsletter to likely more people that have asked that question to themselves, but maybe haven't shared it, to feel like they're part of the conversation. Then you have other opportunities of partnering with different resource organizations, such as ourselves, right? Like as Ears partnered with Perlin Foundation to present workshops and to listen for ideas on what people want support with. So creating opportunities to hear what people think and experience in those different workshops to develop different skills. Um, what might be another one that we've experienced? Um, there's also the events, right? And having annual events and different connection so that your organization is being seen and observed in support of those really difficult conversations. We have an amazing resource in Calgary called the Center for Suicide Prevention, and they have these amazing programs that have everything to do with, kids who are feeling like they might be suicidal. There's actual training programs. You don't have to actually say, I'm on the edge, but simply going through a difficult time. And they've developed these amazing pieces. Um, and then there's always the fun ways. This is what I love. Okay. I feel like if we can have a conversation, we can play a game about it. We can tell a story about it. And so we do pop-up playgrounds where we work with different neuroscience labs that have tested different games for how they support your mental health literacy and promote good brain health. And so we'd have fairs and festivals. We're going to be at Folk Fest and we're going to be playing games to help support people's understanding of what OCD is and Tourette's, right? So wherever you feel like there is an opportunity for your community to come together and a meaningful conversation. I mean, I feel like it's really easy to do the hard stuff. One of my favorite requests for support and to do a workshop was, they said, look, we've talked about mental health challenges, we've talked about schizophrenia, we've talked about challenges with alcoholism and addiction recovery, but we don't know what the point is. Like, so you're going through this, but where are you going next? And that was really where a lot of the healing journey, the inner journey came from, because people wanted to understand, this doesn't just go away. How do we figure out where we are in a process that's going to help carry us forward through to the next stage? So thanks so much. I'm glad that you're liking the ideas. And that's a really great question. Thank you for asking. Can you talk a little more about someone might recognize and manage, their own cognitive dissonance? Yeah, cognitive dissonance, the easiest way. Oh, and that's a good one, Joe. We'll get to that one afterwards. Okay. So cognitive dissonance, actually, the number one way that I've found to deal with my own cognitive dissonance, actually, there's two. First one is journaling. Journaling actually helps you to put your thinking on paper and to force it into a linear statement. I can't count how many times I have been like, oh, this is the worst time. And then I start writing and I'm like halfway through the paragraph and I realized I've completely challenged my own beliefs, right? Um, Sitting with a trusted friend and saying, look, I'm having a really tough time with this topic, right? Because that came up in our presentation earlier. Can you hear me for, 15 minutes? I'll set the timer. I just want to kind of talk through things and let me know what you hear. And then that brings me to the third one, which is mindfulness and meditation. Sitting with yourself for 10 minutes, even, after a really tough conversation, usually helps me to realize where I didn't listen to somebody as well as I could have, or, I really actually could have done something different if I really felt and believed the way that I thought that I had. So it's going to be those reflective processes. So journaling, having a good conversation, or not even a conversation but a listening session with a trusted friend where you feel that discomfort, and then again mindfulness when you really want to create a practice that helps you to simply observe what's going on in your mind and how that might be impacting your beliefs and actions. The other thing I like to recommend about journaling is when you want to feel like you're going to make the most out of the day, like you're not even sure you want to get out of bed, journal in the morning. It helps you to remind yourself of what's ahead of you and that the unknown doesn't need to be so scary. When you have a feeling like you are not, being part of the world and you're kind of disconnected and feeling very numb, journaling at night is a really great way to ground you for a good restful sleep so that you have a better chance of adjusting again in the morning, and it helps you create that value around your day and how you spent your time. And again, it brings out that compassionate voice. I mean, a lot of that also comes through with like tarot and astrology, right? Like if you are playing cards that bring up life serious or scenarios and situations, it helps you to look at them in a different way and tell different stories. And that is a little bit about more about how I would look at cognitive dissonance, and hopefully that helps. I'm going to jump to Jill's question. Can you help us understand how to apply the terms regulation and dysregulation of our nervous systems or those of others? Those terms are everywhere now, they are, and maybe a lot don't understand them. Oh gosh, no, of course not, because we assume we know exactly what the word means, and we assume that everybody has the same definition for them. 100%. So, regulation, let's go with the definition of resilience, right? That idea that you bounce out from where you were based off of a situation, an emotional experience, an activation, and you want to regulate or you want to get back to a place that was similar to where it was before. Now, that's actually a misunderstanding of the context because an elastic band simply stretches and it loosens up over time. What we're trying to do is actually get a better understanding of what fair or that experience is. We think about the context of what is fair, right? Immediately we think that, something activated me and I want to feel like it didn't affect me. It's not fair that I feel that distance. And regulation helps us to come to a place of acceptance of where we're at so we can release the tension of that awareness of the change. Another way to look at this is dealing with chronic pain. So a lot of my chronic pain came from traumatic abuse and assault, and then the somatic impact on my body, which was that I was constantly holding myself in a, high cortisol, constant stress, and we're dysregulated because everything is on a hyperloop. It takes the littlest thing to set us off, and we're so torn that and so tight that the littlest thing will then affect our muscles and will tear, will sprain, will get injured a lot faster. So chronic pain can be this incredibly high, tight, and easily activated, reoccurring and reinforcing of the pain. How do you regulate that, right? So dysregulation means that it works in a non-organic or non-holistic fashion, right? The way that it was designed. The cell structure is great to think about this, right? That's why the first thing we need to do is drink water, creating space in our cells, space in our muscles for blood to flow, for fluids to flow, so we can think properly, so that our hormones can work, so that our thyroid can function, so that our proteins get generated, and then our cells switch the way that they were intended to, and our bodies start to move. So to go back to what you're saying, regulation is about allowing the systems and the functionality of our bodies and minds to come to a place of harmony within us, if that makes sense. So that you're not focused on it saying, oh, it needs to be here in order to be okay. No, it simply needs to feel like it has the flexibility to move towards where it needs to go. That's how we regulate. That's why somatic therapy is such an interesting context, right? Or concept, because we go, well, how is managing my vagus nerve, which is actually when Darwin first discovered it, was called the pneumogastric nerve, because he understood that it twisted your guts, but also was affected with heartache. right? That's our vagus nerve. It is so intrinsic. And 80% of its functionality is not to give, not from the brain to say this is the nerve and it's everything telling it it's okay, but 80% is gathering signals from your body to tell your brain whether or not it's okay. This is why understanding the breathing exercises, the box breathing helped us kind of lower the shoulders, even the exercise of holding our shoulders up for a while and then releasing them and doing that a few times will actually help us to regulate those nervous systems. So if we think about the nervous systems of others, this is why I love focusing on creating compassionate environments, right? When we open up a workshop and we say, hey, if you feel uncomfortable, feel free to, step away. Letting people not be able to, to not have to have their cameras on and their audio on so that they don't necessarily have to be there and visible for everybody else to see is a great way of allowing others the flexibility to regulate where they're at and be present to the best of their ability, wherever that is. I hope that helps to clarify some of the concepts associated with regulation and dysregulation, but please feel free to clarify or to ask another question on that as well. These are not clear-cut concepts that you could say, hey, this is exactly what it is, and this is how you get there. That is a notion of our ego to say, oh, simply give me a description or a definition, and I will align with that accordingly, right? I'll change my habits and behaviors. And so much of our nervous system is about being present to have a neurotypical, I guess, response to fear, to joy, to pain, to surprise. And so much of our trauma that we go through represses those responses, right? So, regulation of our emotional systems, especially when we're dealing with festivals now, which is where I do a lot of my research. We have safer spaces zones. We have creatives on hand in order to work with different art therapies so that when we have very intense social experiences, we have spaces for people to calm down and to play with different things or to get curious so that they're no longer focused so much on the intense situation or intense activation. Daniel says, anything you can speak to about the mentality of luggage at the door versus ways of acknowledging said luggage without focusing on it instead of just ignoring it. Ooh, yes, that was kind of what I was talking about with at the last year's Living a Creative Life Congress with Calgary Arts Development. Oh, awesome, Jill. I'm glad to see that. Um, we had Blackbird Creative working in our green room. And so not only our speakers got to go and play with Play-Doh or have a conversation about something that had come up, or maybe it was a snack and making sure they got the protein that they needed, right? Which is a big thing with ADD and ADHD, is we know that, we're bringing in our anxiety, we're bringing in our lack of executive function at that very moment. And we can acknowledge it, right? By having snacks at the ready, by having textural toys or activities to play with without focusing on it in a negative way. Does that help a little bit there, Daniel? And again, same thing. Please ask a supporting question if I've not quite addressed it. But let me think of another example that might be more consistent in our personal life. Okay. So I have a lot of issues. Yay, me. So, what I do is I make sure that I have fresh fruit and vegetables in my fridge. It's not something that I'm like, ooh, I need my spinach. It's just I know that when I'm feeling very just like too much or overwhelmed or fried, that a salad is going to, with beans, is going to help get me the protein and it's the clean energy I need in order to regulate my digestive system because my anxiety, my control issues are going to tighten my stomach. And that's going to then tighten up my body. And then I'm going to be like, oh God, I can't eat properly. I can't relax. And then you go through that mental cycle. It's so much freer in my life to be able to go, oh, I'm going to go grab a snack and it's there and it's the option that I have. Making sure that I know that yes, exactly. Absolutely. That self-awareness, right? Then all of a sudden we know that I'm a poster fiend. So I've got tons of different signs that meet where I'm at, right? Like, where is the love in this? Calm is the ability to think clearly, to validate and take into account the emotional or intuitive knowing, to build the muscles of the mind and make us stronger at accepting life as it is. Everything we experience is generated by our perception and our senses. Um, there's that great Einstein quote, the mind that opens to a new idea never returns to its original state. That one helps when I'm feeling depressive. Like, why am I thinking this way? Or can I never go back to that blissful ignorance? All right. Oh, yes. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah. It's creating the compassionate environment for ourselves so that we have those options, those people, and creating those rhythms and systems in our lives.
Stacey, thank you for that. I unfortunately need to interrupt you because it's 9 o'clock.
I just saw that. Yeah.
I know. I feel like we could go on and on here.
This was really good.
Yeah, really was. Thank you so much. It's amazing.
Oh, my
I'm really
pleasure.
glad that we're going to have access to the results of this experiment afterwards, and so we can look back on it, because I think this, like you said, there's been a lot here to absorb. And I can imagine, like, this is what's been happening in my brain, is like things are sort of firing, going, oh, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes, oh my God. And then you sort of look back on it and you're like, I want to look at it all again. So it's good.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll have some of the resources I talked about, the quotes again, and then some of the definitions that I referred to. Then you'll have the hyperlinks as well to those for further exploration.
More resources, always good, always good. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Wow. So thank you for this, and thank you for all you do with the Perlin Foundation and what all you offer to the community. And
Thank you.
it's what I kept thinking of it is that your presence in various ways, it's like you're a balancer. You're helping people to balance things out, which is incredible.
In my own weird, wonderful way.
The thing is, you can have no concept of what that means unless you have needed it yourself. So,
Yeah, big time.
mhm.
And that was why I was so excited when you asked for this presentation and the workshop, because I was like, oh, we are such a unique brand of individuals and community, and being able to appreciate that about ourselves in our journey is such a big part of our healing. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stacey. It was wonderful. I just enjoyed all aspects of your presentation. I thought it was amazing how you got the group to express themselves. So wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Oh yeah, amazing group here tonight. Thank you all for being so brave with us. We're benefiting because of your courageous contributions. So thank you.
Well, thanks everybody for being here tonight, and stay safe, stay cool out there, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
I hope it's a wonderful one.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got back to that Mentimeter slide.
Yes,
The
that's really
Mentimeter was
tool.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And playing around with it, right?
Tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time I've seen it. It's brilliant.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, well, there's another one I'm going to put in the chat that's really helpful. And it's completely free, and there's some different versions of it, but because it's free, I like to make sure that we have access to it. And then I know you guys probably have things to do and sleep to enjoy. All right, where is